Welcome to today's Resilience Reset, the only live of this week because the schedule has changed. So Mondays, 3:15. Thank you for being here. And today is all about how can you stress less this holiday season. I was talking with a friend of mine who, she has kids and a family and, just a lot of hustle and bustle on the go. And I said, "Oh, are you really excited about Christmas?" And she's like, no. All it is for me is a whole bunch of stress. And she said, I can't wait for January to get here. And I know there are many people who can't relate to this. They're just like, you know what, another season, I'm good. I got it figured out. And then there are people who are really stressed during this time. And there are lots of things that can complicate this time of year. And so we're just going to dive into that and give you some ideas on how to actually navigate that a little bit less stressfully. So if you are watching live, I hope you'll put your name in the chat box and say hello, and I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, let's get rolling on how do we take the stress out of the holiday season. And, the first thing is really around expectations and knowing like what is it that you're trying to accomplish. I think one of the biggest challenges we have is that we watch W network movies. I don't know if anybody else does. I do. My lashes have hit my glasses here. So we have this picturesque moment of tree lightings and family gatherings without real arguments and all of that, and it's just not necessarily reasonable to have this picturesque expectation of what the holidays should be. And so really just looking at that, what are you trying to prove? Who are you trying to impress? What are the elements that are stressing you out? Ooh, that's getting into the next place. Oh, Sarah, she's here live. I love it. Oh, how fun. Yeah, I love wearing the pink and black. Look at me. I feel very racer-like today. Awesome to have you here. So good to see you. So I think that expectation, like who are you trying to impress? And just from a compassionate curiosity perspective, not from a judgment, let's really figure that out because we still have a few weeks to go, right? Like, well, not that long, but, let's try to figure this out. Now, the other thing is that I think that right now, wherever you are in the world, there may be new COVID restrictions in place, and there might be challenges with vaccinated, unvaccinated, all of those COVID elements that are adding another layer of intensity to what is happening and what your expectations may be. So I think one of the things that is probably the hardest when it comes to the holidays right now is this letting go of the longing for the way it used to be, right? The big family gatherings, the, getting to see everybody in your extended family. That was one of my favorite parts of the entire season. And that's not happening because, it's just with travel and everything like that. It's just not feasible with COVID and the new restrictions that are coming in. So I like really processing that and grieving the way it was and thinking, how can you make the best of what it is today? Right? Not what it was yesterday, but what can you do and how can you be totally happy and joyous with the new family traditions that may be very pared down compared to the past, for sure. Now, another thing that I think is really interesting as I've observed over the last several years as I've been doing this work in resiliency and problem solving is that like the holidays add a whole other new layer of tasks, right? Decoration, new baking, maybe kids activities, it just adds these things on. But the piece that I think people don't account for necessarily very effectively is the fact that before those things got added on, you are already at your maximum capacity. You already have too many tasks to deal with, right? So here's my rule. If a task goes on the list, one needs to come off of the list. Now, this is probably harder than you think it is, or it could be reversed. It could be easier than you think it is. But if we get into the habit of being like, okay, yes, I'm going to go to that party, Okay, wait a second though. What does that mean I'm not going to have time to do that I would do outside of the holiday season? And start calculating like that and figuring out, okay, where is this extra space and this capacity going to come from? Like you just can't add more on and not like sleep, right? Because that'll just exacerbate the problem. So really looking at like you only have so much capacity to do, to think, to feel, to be each and every day. And so how we allot that is hugely important. And it's important to do it strategically as opposed to just, because because it worked. All right. Okay, so let's keep going here. Next idea that I have for you to stress less this holiday season is to ask for help. So often, people who love the holidays and have this picturesque vision of how the holidays should go may not be as open. I'm trying to think of a way to say this, to letting other people do it the way they want to do it. So, delegating is better than drowning. And, if you are drowning in there's so much to get done and I want to make this perfect and I've got company coming over or whatever the case may be, then you've got to look at that list and go, okay, who can I give this off to? And if the answer is no one, then what can I delete on this list? Going back to the last tip, what can I delete on this list so that what I'm trying to do is actually a reasonable expectation? Something to think about. But it leads to my next point. And this might offend some people, so I mean it with all the love in the world. Stop nagging. Like, stop nagging the people in your family who maybe are not as excited about putting on a perfect Christmas dinner or any holiday, whatever holiday we're inclusive here, right? So whatever you're celebrating. Not everybody wants to make things as great as perhaps you want to make them. And so if you're caught up in this, I asked you to put up that, nativity scene, or I asked you to put up those, decorate the tree or to turn on the lights or change the lights. And you say that like 8, 9 times in the course of like 3 or 4 hours, everybody's going to be annoyed and stressed. And here's the thing. Sometimes we just have to be with okay if we delegate something off, to allow it to just, if it doesn't get done by the person who's saying it's going to get done. Okay. So if you don't have any ice for the party, okay, then you know what? People drink warm drinks. Who cares? Maybe you care, but then, okay, that's not the thing to delegate if it's that big of a deal. All right, we've got some comments here. Let's see what's going on. Totally agree. It's longing for days of growing up. Yeah. Family, social events, etc. We used to love that. I saw you on many social events. It's so different now. And you know what? It is. And it's like, I noticed even myself, I was so sad that I wasn't going to see my extended family again this year. And it was just like, you know what, Ellie? Okay, you got to take some time to process that and to be okay with it, because if I carry that energy into the season, how am I going to be able to relax and truly enjoy this time of year? Yeah. Delegate over drowning. Yeah. It's so important. But then once you delegate it, put some timelines around it, be specific, get agreement. Are you open to doing that? And then, like, to this point that I was just making there a second ago, you can't nag somebody once you've delegated. And I hate to say it, but I have so many conversations with friends of mine who are just so focused, and we talk about this, like, so focused on how they think it needs to be. And then it turns into a fight because the other people in the household are not participating in the same level of commitment. And so this is like, how can you just be okay if it doesn't get done? How can you let the person who was supposed to do it suffer the consequences instead of swooping in and being the savior and making it happen? Because you know what? Then we just teach people to kind of not do the thing we've asked them to do, right? If you continually step in and actually save the day, there's no consequence for it not getting done. So maybe you are at the dinner table and there's no pie baked, right? Or and you have to go to the store and get a store-bought pie. Well, like, no big deal. If you make really good pie, maybe it's a big deal, but you know what I mean. All right. Being okay with that imperfection goes back to our original thought around what are your expectations of yourself, of other people, of how the season should go? What can you do to not have such a fixed perfection, vision of how it should happen? And process that and be like, okay, that's all right. Um, what? I think one of the other things that is so, so critical, and I'm laughing because I know how hard this can be for many people, is if you want to say no, say no. Like if somebody says, hey, would you like to come to our party? And you're like, oh my God, all I want to do is curl up in my pajamas and watch those W Network movies, then you know what you get to do? You get to say, no, I can't come. No excuses, no anything. I'm sorry. Thank you so much for the invitation. I can't make it work this year. Let's get together in the new year. Done. If you want to get together in the new year. Don't say it if you don't. After COVID and not seeing anyone, then why would you take anyone on? Yeah. Be so thankful to be together. Oh, are you talking about from a perspective of the fights and everything and the drama? Why would you want to take them on? Like having a argument? I think maybe that's what you're thinking there, Sarah. I don't know. We'll see. Because you won't be so shocked at what's coming next. But okay, so let's stick with the not saying no part. Or yeah, so if you have a tendency to not say no, double negative, but you know what I'm talking about, and you find yourself often in the situation where it's like, ugh, I got to do this because I said I would do it, then now is the time to grow a backbone and feel okay and empowered to own your no. Own your no, and without guilt, by the way. Without it, because that just makes it even harder. Oh, yeah. Okay, Sarah's saying, who cares if they bring a pie? Exactly, right? However, the arguments I've been privy to on little things like that are significant, right, for some families, because there's this expectation and this desire to have this perfect image and, this perfect meal and all of those things. And so, let them sit at the dinner table and admit that they didn't do it. They won't, maybe next year they'll actually do it. Wouldn't that be great? So here's the thing. And now I know we're not quite as event heavy as we used to be. Okay. But there are still things going on. And that for someone like me, who's an ambivert, so I'm a little extroverted, but I'm actually really a lot more introverted than people would give me credit for. Going to a party and spending too much time there can actually be a real drain on my energy, on my pain levels, on everything. So what I have is I have a rule. I either go early or stay late, but not both. So go be right at the very beginning, greet the, as the host of the party is greeting the guests and doing everything. But then as soon as you have a window to get out, make a point of it or excuse yourself early and say, look, I can only stay for an hour or two. And then I've got to bail, and they'll be like, okay, no problem. Or say, you know what, I can't get there until after dinner. So I'll come in for dessert, depending on the situation, right? Or I'll come for drinks later, or I'll get there whatever time works for you. Now, if it's somewhere you totally want to be and you're absolutely going to have a ton of fun, then go for it. You don't have to cut it short one way or the other, but because fun is good, that will help our stress levels. But I think if you're that's just a way to mitigate it. And that was a trick I learned way, 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 way back when I used to write a column called The People You Know, which was in London Free Press. And I went to events. I went to 241 events in 1 year. Don't ever do that, please. Yeah. So I went. So that was my rule: go early or stay late, but not both. And that just can really help for sure. So, by the way, any ideas, questions, situations, things that you want to like throw in the chat box? I'm open to giving insight or just hearing your approach. Like you might have some other tips for people who are watching. So please, by all means, share them and I'll bring them up on the screen. But I think the absolute most critical piece of the puzzle, aside from managing your own energy, okay, which this feeds into it, is you need to stay away from toxic situations and people. So, what do I mean by that? If somebody is really negative, if they are really stressed, if they have a high level of perfectionism and expect you to have it too, if they're triggering you for, something like, oh, like I used to, I won't tell you who, but it'd be like, I'd be eating dessert and it'd be like, do you really need that piece of pie? Yeah, I do. And I need it more because you're telling me I don't need it, That's sort of personal thing there. Finding a gracious way to get out of an event and leave while it is going on. Oh, do you want to know how to? Oh, really simple. Lots of different ways. Is that what you're asking, Brenda, for some ideas on how to do that? Okay, well, number one is set the expectation in advance. So even if you don't know when you're going to come, just say, you know what, I've got some commitments that night. And by the way, maybe your commitment is being at home. Doesn't matter. I've got some other commitments that night. I'd love to come and I won't be able to stay very long. And then what happens is you get there and if you get in flow and you want to stay, you just stay. And if you are like, don't, then you've already set up the expectation that you're going to be leaving. And then you can remind your host and say, hey, listen, thanks so much. I think it's all about being gracious, right? Thanks so much. Absolutely love being here. As mentioned earlier, I can't stay very long, but I'm glad I was here I actually stayed longer than I thought I would, or something like that. And that to me has always been the easiest way to move. And the other thing is just say, thank you so much. We've got to get going. I have another commitment, or just we've got to get going. Thanks for having me. Like, again, graciousness, and then you can leave. That's the way I've done it anyway. Nobody's ever kicked me out and said, oh, you're mean. I don't want you ever to come back. Relate about the dessert. My mom did that. I had 2 pieces after that comment and I wasn't going to have any. Isn't that funny? I get it. It's like, if you're going to tell me what I can and cannot eat, because you know what it is? It's a stab, right? It's a passive aggressive comment in this situation about my weight. And yeah. So, but okay. So we got to keep going on this. So, because we got to figure out how do we deal with it. So number one, if you can not communicate or be around or limit at the very least your interactions with negative, toxic people, that's critical. And that takes some, time, like, oh, okay, great. One way I did that, I used to do this. I gave this advice to some like high-end executives when we were talking about networking back when I coached on networking and spoke on that. And some of them would say, look, there are certain people who I already have a relationship with, or certain clients who I already have a relationship with, and they kind of expect to go to every hockey game with me or to go to every gala that I go to. And I want to like shake it up and invite different people all the time. But I always feel like, okay, I get put on default, with this person. And I'm like, okay, well, one way you can combat that is set the next time you're going to see them. So if, Friday night's a hockey game and the next Friday night's a hockey game and you would go both Friday nights, then you would, at that one hockey game, you would set the expectation that you are going to get together in 2 weeks from then, right? Because people don't like if you have plans in a week or 2 or 3 or 4, then people don't often like fill in the blank and go, no, I want another plan now. It's just like, when's that next time? And So just doing that. But the other thing is you can just in that situation straight out and say, look, I got to really change up who I'm taking to the game. And, maybe we could do it once a month instead of 4 times a month or whatever. So part of it is the communication, but part of it is setting the stage. So let's say you have someone who is really toxic, but you spend a lot of time with them. We need to change that any time of the year, but especially during the holidays, it could be really troublesome. So what you could say is, hey, look, let's get together on, I don't know, the 27th. Okay. So you're planning that, but here we are on the 13th. Maybe you could limit in between then to say, I got a lot on my plate between now and then. And so I'm just managing my own expectations and energy. So let's plan to do our typical Friday night, the weekend after Christmas or something like that. Right. Just working through that. But here's the thing. If you can't limit your time that you're going to spend with someone who's toxic, then we need to change how you respond to the negativity. So let's use that pie example, Brenda. Okay. If now, being where I'm at in my growth stage, I would, if somebody said that to me, I would just say, thank you very much. Well, yeah, let me check in. Yeah, I'm good. And then just go, but no bitterness, no eating to prove a point, no any like animosity about it. Just shut it down and move on. And like, this is key because people who are really extra negative are going to be negative whether you help them to be or not. But if they're negative and you assist them in the negativity, whoa, have we got a victim trap ready to get for us to get sucked into? And so if one person is negative and you don't participate, you don't add to that negativity, then they can be negative in a silo and you don't have to be part of the negativity. You don't have to take it on. You know what? That's your energy. Go for it. I'm not going to participate. All right, let's check the comments. I like the no excuses, I'm booked. That gave me a lot of relief, not explaining anything, and no one asked for a reason or an excuse. This is the thing, right? And if somebody's a little bit sensitive and maybe they get a little put off because you didn't say it for the whole party, you know what? That's not your responsibility. They've got to adult. They've got to adult. Right? That's not you have to manage your own energy and your own expectations. You can't police everybody else's. And being sure that's how we get burned out is, well, one of the ways is we're trying to do everything for everybody else's expectations and negating our own. Yeah, thanks for that. Right. Clearly articulate your boundaries. I will be there by, but I have to leave to meet another commitment. That's right. And you don't even have to put a time frame on that, right? Like, because you can just be like, look, I can come for a little bit. Great. Come for a little bit. Awesome. Most people would prefer to have you there than to have you stay for the entire thing. Would prefer like to not come for anything, I guess is what I'm saying, would be worse than you coming for an hour of a 3-hour party. Right? That's the way I look at it. But I think that big piece of the puzzle is if you're around negativity, you've got to protect yourself, protect your own well-being, because stressed out people inspire others to be really, really stressed. And that's not fair to you if you're trying to manage and, cut the stress out of the season. And so a couple things you can do before you're going somewhere where you know that it could potentially be troublesome. Prime yourself, right? Get into your good headspace, make a plan for the things you know are going to happen, how you're going to be triggered, have some sense of what you're going to do to combat it. So you're not just walking in blindly, like go in with a strategy, right? And then as soon as somebody starts to push your buttons, if this happens in your world, then you've got to have those tools in your toolkit. So walking away from the conversation, making a joke and deflecting the conversation, although I don't believe deflecting is a good idea when it comes to keeping the peace at the dinner table, it really can be. bringing up a new topic, bringing up even just taking some deep breaths, like can be really good to reset, but not in like a, um, sorry, I'm thinking of family dynamics at this point, but not in a way of doing it. And I've seen this even in workplaces where somebody takes a deep breath by looking over at one of their colleagues who's on their side and doing a really dramatic, that kind of breath, right? And instead of just being like looking at the person and just not reacting. One of the greatest freedoms in our life is when we realize that we do not need to be emotionally or mentally or physically pulled in the direction of somebody else's behavior. Like in our day-to-day, right? So we could be at a dinner table with 12 people and 11 of them could be in an argument about COVID or whatever. And we can just sit there and go in our happy place in our mind and say, like, can you pass the pie, please? Yeah. Around negativity, then an exit strategy is key. Yeah, because it'll just wear you down. But it also, the negativity comes from so many places. Like, are you consuming the news and getting all riled up before you go into a situation? Then you're more apt to be negative. That's why I say we've got to prime ourselves for how we want to show up, right? A positive, knowing our confidence, being in our juju, maybe listen to some music, exercise, have a little dance off with ourselves, whatever we need to do. Yeah. With comments, be the observer, not the target. Yes. And some may think that that's a way, because I do it a lot now. I just like am like, okay, because I noticed myself, like when COVID and all the vaccines and the mandates and everything, like I was getting into arguments with friends that I don't want to be in. And so now for the most part, like if I don't talk about it. I've got my opinions. I can keep them to myself. Nothing's going to solve the world's problems if I express my wholehearted opinion. Right? Yeah. Yeah. See, Sarah's agreeing with you. It takes mental discipline because our instinct is often we want to pile on. And really what I'm getting you to hopefully think about is you want to plug the rabbit hole. Don't pile onto it. Stop it. Put the big cover over and squash it down. But, even that idea of like where we look at our colleague or we look at a friend in the room or somebody who's quote unquote on our side and have that exchange, that person who you're doing that to sees it. You may not think they see it, but they sense it or they see it. And so if you are finding yourself in a situation where you're in the background, right, gossiping or adding drama or flair or commentary to a situation about somebody else who's in your space, that's on you. And that's on you to stop. That is on you to not participate in that. Like we are no longer in high school. Talking about people behind their back is just not a professional or a thoughtful way to live our lives. I think especially in these days, everybody's just doing the best that they can. Like, I'm going to say we, because me too, like are just exhausted from COVID. We're exhausted from not having full freedoms in our lives. We are done. And everybody's reacting to that a little bit in a different way. And so you've got to take the bigger upper hand. If someone else is gossiping and they're causing drama and they're in the thick of it, just let them be in the thick of it. Like, not for you to participate. And if you want to take the stress out of the season, then I think that that's hugely important to do that. So there is my thinking for today on how do you stress less this holiday season. And just for those of you who are just joining, I'll just do a really quick recap. You're already busy, right? You already got a lot of stuff on the go. So if you add a task onto the list, you need to delete another task. We have to look at your expectations for the perfection, for the, this is the way it's always been. We also talked about grieving the way our holidays used to be and figuring out how can I be joyous with today's circumstances. So incredibly critical. Asking for help. Delegating is better than drowning in all of the work that needs to get done. So if you are struggling to get the work done, find some other people to do it. If you can't delegate it, you've got to get it off the list and delete. Right? And then we had a big thing about stop nagging, because that doesn't help anybody. Saying no. Yes, it went on. Okay, what have we got here? I had a huge mental panic years ago, re-Christmas, gifts, etc. I am just happy now to see some few family members, etc. I wouldn't make drama. I remember when you and I, Allie, saw each other many times. London, who you know? Oh yeah, the column. Well, and we've known each other for years, Sarah. It's like, and to your point, the gifts are another point of stress. Like if you're not somebody who loves shopping for and giving gifts, then it's like, okay, and like people are having financial struggles. So that could be another layer of stress, right? That goes back to the idea, if you want to say no, say no. Like just say we're not doing gifts this year, right? Or you guys go ahead, but I'm not participating. And like maybe for the kids, but kids are a lot easier than adults. Let's be honest. Yeah. Okay. But it's up to you to really own this and not be participating in the toxicity, because the intensity of the energy is just getting a little bit more and more and more. Right? So let's do our part to allow ourselves to not be stressed and not be in that, like, in that state of just not happy. Online shopping or whatever. Yeah, like do it easy. Easy peasy peasy. All right. Well, there ends the resilience reset for today. And we're just doing this on Mondays now, 3:15 on Mondays. So I hope you will mark it in your calendar, and it's easier to come just one time than all four. I'm still going to do some interviews and book reports. Like every time I read a book, I'll probably put one up and do something on here. But I'm really grateful for you and being here and letting me just riff on different topics. And today being, how do you stress less in the holiday season? So I wish you the absolute best of the season. I will be here next Monday, and then that might be it for the rest of the year, but we'll see. And yeah, here's to a great season coming up. Mine's going to be pretty low key, I dare say. Anyway, until next time, may you stress less, do more, and be happier. Bye for now. Oh, wait, somebody, one last comment. Glad I caught this. Good to see you, Allison Graham. Lovely post. Aw, thank you. I appreciate it. So great to have you here. And Sarah, thank you. I love you too. It's awesome. Okay, have the best day.